Hey, it's Chris. What are we talking about today? Undaunted, the latest in the series, Battle for Britain from Osprey Games. They sent me a copy so I could talk to you about it as a head-to-head dueling scenario-based game. And now, if you're not familiar, it sort of takes a different twist on what we traditionally think of as war games, and we get a 1-versus-1 dog-fighting deck building competitive game as we build modular scenarios over land, sea, and air, trying to outdo your opponent. What do I think of it? Why is it a really good game? Let's talk. Now, you'll notice right in front of me right now, I've got the first scenario set up so you can get sort of the gist of what it's going to look like when you get it to your table. The combination here is of your planes going dogfighting head-to-head against your opponents, whether you are the RAF or the Luftwaffe. And you have a asymmetric deck that you will be utilizing, customizing, depending on the scenario that is presented for you in the scenario book of 10 in the first place. Choose your side, set it up, and go. Now, what you'll see in front of me here is you'll see that each side is not going to be equal, right? If you are the Luftwaffe in this case, you have a different set of objectives than the RAF, and you have a different amount of fighters. The RAF here has 6 different fighters at their disposal. The Luftwaffe has 4. Now, which 4, which 6, that's going to make a difference because the capabilities are different. The cards that you're going to be utilizing are asymmetric, and the win objectives for each scenario are also going to be different. So if you only need to take out, say, 2 as opposed to 3, that's a significant advantage in how you're going to tactically take advantage of your numbers if you need to take out more versus if you are the lesser and have to take out less. This game plays off of the previous Undaunted campaign games with very similar terminology of maneuvering, of moving, of combating back and forth. Now, you need to be aware that with this game, you're going to be rolling dice in order to try and hit your opponent's ships as you go head to head. The tricky part of this is, and this is why some people may like it, but some people also may still not be appeased from a dice rolling randomness effect, that you only need 1 hit to do a damage. So if I roll here a 10, a 9, and a 5, well, I might get 2 hits, but really all I needed was 1 in the first place because that damages your opponent and their ship in the first place. What does that mean? And here's the clever part of this game, right? In your decks, you're going to be having multiple different types of cards. As you can see, they correspond to both communications, actions, as well as the actual pilots with their ships themselves. And so as your ships get hit, they don't actually have a certain number of life points per se, but you have to lose cards that will activate said ship in the first place. So you just have less cards to utilize in order to make this craft as most efficient as possible. And you're taking them in order from your hand, your discard pile, and then the reserve. And if you can't take any more out, well, then ship gone, ship out. Win objective for the first scenario, well, that much closer to being achieved. And so that's the dynamic that you're having to deal with. 1 hit doesn't cripple you, 1 hit doesn't make you immobile. It just changes the dynamic of how you're going to be using it in the first place. The other thing that cannot be understated is these craft have to be oriented. Orientation, unlike a lot of other head-to-head duelers in this game, makes a big difference. You can see that on the map, I have all of these facing at a certain 60-degree angle because on these hexes, you have 6 ways that they can be facing based on the map arrangement. And as you move them, they are going to be heading in the direction in which they're pointing. If you want to change that, you have to take an action called maneuvering that allows you to take 1 and turn, 1 and turn, 1 and turn. You cannot do multiple turns, 1, 2, and then move. And so that changes, again, the dynamic of how you're going to be approaching this because you also have to move in order to do some of your actions. So you might want to end up head to head here and be taking out this ship, but if you want to hit it again to do it another damage to the next round, well, there's a good chance that you're going to pass and fly by and not be able to turn around in time to be able to do it. Whereas, you know, hitting them from this range is going to be very easy based off the dice, because as you are further away, the difficulty of their defensive value increases, meaning it's harder to hit, obviously, if you're here versus here, plus or minus whatever the barriers might be thrown in your way. And so you want to get as close as possible. But if you do, going around again for a second pass might be next to impossible. So your risk reward there is tremendously high, but you need to be aware of what the consequences are of trying to make sure that the hit happens in the first place. The other thing that you have to be aware of is, as you can see, I now have G1 over on this side of the map. G2 is all the way over here. A lot of your cards, for example, in this game are going to be utilizing comms in the communication short, if you will, meaning these pilots and these squadrons need to stay in touch with each other. They are not able to stay in touch with each other and coordinate with each other as nearly much as you would like. And if they do not stay next to each other in the same hex grid base system, then using these cards is going to earn you things that are going to clog up your deck, called Discord. Discord cards are just there to, well, just cause essentially just that. They clog up your deck in order to prevent you from being as efficient as possible in the core mechanism of this game in the first place of the deck builder. If you can't be as efficient as possible, you can't take as many actions, it's going to be real hard to achieve your win conditions in the first place. Now, I say hex. That doesn't mean they have to be right next to each other, but you'll see if I lift these up, for example, that this is considered a hex. So if they're within this hex of each other, that's within communications. But if they are not, then you're going to have more and more potential to slog through your deck in order to get the actions that you want. Because this also ties into the other phase of this game. This is not a simple yo-yo back and forth, I go, you go sort of style of game, right? With war, the victor is the aggressor oftentimes. And so this game plays on that in terms of the discord as well as the actual maneuvering of the cards that are available in your first place. Because as you can see on the upper left hand of all of these cards, they come with a number, and that's the initiative value. At the beginning of every round, you determine who has the initiative, and the person who has the initiative goes first. But if you have one of these discord in your hand at all, you are forced to play that as your face down initiative card in order to initiate the round in the first place. That is the only thing that they can be used for. Now, you can burn through cards in your deck in order to get rid of them with the coordinate action, but do you want to have to do that and waste your turn in the first place if you can avoid it? So keeping your planes together versus trying to go and take somebody out, Top Gun style, what's your preference, Maverick? Otherwise, you're going to be slowly adding to your deck in the first place, because all of these cards that are going to be present available to you are going to have a significant portion of them in what's known as your supply rather than in your deck that you're actually playing from and drawing from on a turn-by-turn basis. That same supply that I mentioned earlier of where you may be potentially losing cards if you are hit and do not have them in the other two places beforehand. And as you gradually add them, you're increasing your deck size, but you're also having to choose what's most important, maneuvers, tactics, or just more actions with the planes themselves to try and take out whoever's in front of you. Scenarios themselves, all 10 of them, are asymmetric. They're different, and they're giving you variable setups as well as objectives as you go along. Anti-aircraft, ships in the water, defensive margins that you're going to be having to burn through, go through, or destroy in order to win in the first place. Now, for example here, you can see my G2 card here. This gives you an example of how this is going to be played. G2 is right here. Move 2. I can move up to 2 hexes. If I want to maneuver, though, I have to choose maneuver. I have to declare that before I do anything. So I have to maneuver 2. Or I could stop here in the first place, but you can start to see that my line of sight is also going to be my attack, so that's not going to work. So 1, 2, turn. But that's also going to be the direction that I'm going to have to go next turn, so it's going to be harder to hit either of these ones going forward. Maneuvering, and then your attack value down here, meaning this is how many dice you're rolling in order to get the hit to pass the opponent's defense, which is also listed on the little chip here, for example, As you can see, maybe not, it's listed as a 5 down there on this Y1. And so then I get one chance, one die, roll it. Now, if I'm attacking from one of their weak spots, especially from behind, I'm outmaneuvered, I've outflanked them, then you roll what's in the sort of reddish pink here, and I would roll 2 dice. But again, I rolled an 8 and 9. Does it really matter? Well, no, I have a defensive value of 5, so I have a 1 hit right there no matter what. 2 hits doesn't change things. They're just going to lose one of the Y1 cards from their deck. Do that enough and you can potentially achieve your win conditions, especially at least in the first scenario. The other thing that you have to know is this is not a game a la other deck builders where you're traditionally allowing yourself to build up your hand and perform the most optimal turn next time. No, this is a use it or lose it. You play the cards that you draw on a turn-by-turn basis, you use them or you lose them to your discard pile. So you have to be very judicious in how things are coming together. These 10 scenarios offer you quite a variety. Most of the objectives are neutralizing your opponent's aircraft. But how you're going to be doing so, the game state in which it's going to start with in the first place are all going to be dramatically different. Your planes may start on the ground neutralized or incapacitated. You may have anti-aircraft that you have to utilize. You may have to destroy a certain number of ships that are in the ocean in order to do that. You may have special actions or rules in the later scenarios that are going to change it up even further. This is a game that has surprising amount of strategic value just with what is presented to you on the first pass. And that sort of leads me into my thoughts about this game, right? How do I feel about this game? I have no qualms about telling you right now that this is an excellent game. This is an excellent, excellent game. I have not played the other Undaunted. I can only imagine the differences between the ground and the air battles that this is offering. At the same time, I don't need to have played them to know what this is bringing to the table, literally and metaphorically. It takes the 2-player head-to-head asymmetric dueling aspect of things, throws it on a grid-based map, and allows you to go ad nauseum as much as you want or as little as you want. If you play this game as a slug 'em out, you will not do well. If that is your preferred type of game, this is not going to be for you. But if you are looking for something, what I thought was initially going to be just very tactical, because as you're maneuvering these ships across the board, you're trying to just go for the easy objective in front of you. But if you're not strategic about this, which a lot of the other 2-player dueling style head-to-head take that games don't always have, you're going to be eventually outflanked and outmaneuvered. Again, both literally and metaphorically. And so therein lies the dilemma. Is this game, as something that is slightly heavier strategic-wise than appearances are going to give on the surface, right for you? And that's where my own personal dilemma comes in. I love 2-player asymmetric head-to-head duelers. But with the heavy focus on the strategic portion of things in this game, much so at the second half of the scenarios and missions, is it as good a fit for me personally right now as I was hoping when I started playing it? And the honest answer probably is probably not. And that's where I'm separating this one out. I think that this is going to be a game that is well loved for good reasons, like I already mentioned. It is doing something with the deck building aspect of losing cards based off of damage that's done that we don't see in a lot of other similarly incorporated mechanisms or games. I think the scenarios that they've designed are unique, they're fun, but they're also a little bit longer as well, potentially, depending on how strategic you want to get and how aggressive you are on the map in the first place. Because if you are strategic and you're strafing and you're maneuvering around the edges and you're slowly picking at your targets more a la chess rather than checkers, this game is going to be longer in general each scenario. If you want to checkers it, if you will, where, I'm playing against my 9-year-old and, strategy isn't there. I jump when I see jumps. This game is going to be a lot shorter, and truth be told, it might not go your way that well. But it's also going to give you that sense, regardless of how you play, that you have some options in front of you with all of these cards in the first place that I showed you. And therein lies your dilemma. How deep, how much do you want to utilize this game? Because it appears, like I said, on surface value, this wide and this deep. But truth be told, it's this wide and this deep. It's just sort of like the pool at the local gym. How far are you willing to dare and venture out into the deep end before you find your limits? And that's the question you have to ask yourself, because if you are willing to venture out into the deep end with this one, you're going to have a blast with it. But if you're much more heavy tactical and a little bit less strategic, like I tend to be, my own personal biases, I'm not sure it fits my play style as much as I would have liked, like I mentioned. And so for me, again, splitting it from how good is this game versus how good of game is this for me personally to stay in my collection, that's where I'm having trouble reconciling it. And I can tell you that this one might not stay in my collection just for those reasons. Not having played the other Undaunteds, I can't tell you if this is, dramatically different. But the big criticism that's been weighed at them in the past is that, it's not truly a war game. This is getting closer, I would argue. And it's going to fit people a lot better. And the other tremendous thing that this does is, if this does suit your fancy with more of the strategy, with a little bit more in this one in particular, this is a great segue for people looking to get into, or people that were not looking to get into that realm of games in the first place. And that's what you really want to see out of a game like this as a whole. Does it bring people in that would have not otherwise played this based on theme or mechanism from a war game standpoint alone? And does it make them fans? And I can emphatically say, yeah. Because you know what? You don't have to keep a game in your collection, in my case, to understand how good a game is and the importance of what it's able to do at the same time. Now, otherwise, a few downsides. I mean, as I mentioned, right? These tiles, they're all modular. The setup and teardown, because they're all different and they're all lettered, and because some of these things matter in terms of defense or ships or anti-aircraft, I mean, it's a little bit more of a tedium setting up and, taking down. Not a big thing. I mean, similarly with the deck, right? This is a large deck, and there's a lot of cards that you're going to be sorting through. It's not terrible. It's a minor thing. But I can see people saying that along with just the dice, right? Like I mentioned. Because you can't really necessarily mitigate it nearly as much as you might want on this, and sometimes you just get bad rolls, and you miss even point blank next to the ship that you're targeting in the first place. And so how do you feel about that? Where there isn't necessarily that guaranteed success, no matter how much you stack the dice or the deck in your favor. And again, it's not a make it or break it. I think the initiative system is very clever, and I think it works. I think the comms system with the Discord and the disconnect and the deck disrupting works very well in order to make this game more strategic. Because again, if you didn't have that element of things, this would be a slug them out, go as fast and quick as you can, and overpower your enemies. So scenarios like this, where you've got 6-on-4, would just fall apart completely. And so I love the fact that they're doing that. I also like the damage system. It's not, I did 3 hits, and so you took 3 hits this time, and it knocks you down from 5 health to 2 health. Nope, it's lose a card. Okay, you only have so many cards. Where are you going to lose them from? Oh, can't get that plane out, can't get that ship out, can't play this one anymore. There you go. And that's just a cool mechanism. So all in all, I mean, I know why people love the Undaunted series now. The real question, though, is, as someone who's not a war gamer in the first place, does this win you over? And the answer, honestly, again, is yes and no. And that's kind of cool at the same time, as weird as that sounds. Because I went into this really high from the 2-player asymmetric dueling standpoint, and I went into this incredibly scared because I have no experience, no interest in war games in the first place. And I said, what's going to win over? Heart or head? And to be honest, it's kind of a wash, and that's kind of cool because that actually exceeded my expectations because I was just concerned, frankly, again, that I was going to hate it. Just because of my lack of interest in war games in general and the mechanics that go behind them oftentimes on the tabletop. So, like I said, I call that a win overall. And so hopefully, if you're interested in this, you give it a look-see as well. But that's Battle of Britain. Undaunted, Osprey Games. Check it out if you're interested. It's doing something different. At the same time, it's doing a good spin on something that other people have seen before and trying to get more people into this scene in the first place. So I give them a lot of kudos. There's a lot of game here with 10 scenarios. A lot. Thanks for watching. Stay classy. Great freaking day.